AMD closed the week at $203.78, down just over 1% on Friday, and this latest move continues a pattern that has been building for several weeks. The stock has been drifting downward, sentiment has cooled, and the energy surrounding the AI trade has noticeably softened. Yet, despite this persistent weakness in AMD's share price, the company's long-term story remains one of the most ambitious in the semiconductor industry. This contrast between a weakening stock and a strengthening long-term narrative is creating one of the most interesting setups AMD has seen all year. Right now, AMD is caught between two forces. On one side, you have strong fundamentals, a growing presence in AI, and analysts who still see a multi-year runway of opportunity. On the other side, you have a market that is demanding short-term proof, especially after months of enthusiasm and rising valuations. When these two forces collide, you get the kind of price action we are seeing now. A slow bleed. A grinding pullback. Not a crash, but not a recovery either. It is a period of indecision, where the market is waiting for a catalyst that can tip the scales. To understand how AMD reached this point, it helps to look at the broader context. Over the past year, AI-related companies have enjoyed a powerful run. Money flowed into anything tied to artificial intelligence, including semiconductor companies, cloud providers, and hardware manufacturers. This wave didn't just lift AMD, it helped push it to valuation levels that reflected not only current performance but future expectations that were exceptionally high. As long as sentiment in the AI sector remained overwhelmingly positive, those elevated valuations felt justified. But sentiment eventually shifts, and that is exactly what the market is experiencing now. AI stocks are pulling back across the board. Investors who were once eager to pay almost any price for AI growth are now taking a step back and asking harder questions. They are asking about execution. They are asking about timing. They are asking when ambitious roadmaps will translate into actual revenue acceleration. AMD, like many companies in the AI hardware space, is now entering that phase where investors want proof instead of promises. It isn't enough to talk about future demand or long-term strategy. The market wants to see tangible evidence of growth in the present. This creates a temporary mismatch between the company's long-term trajectory and the market's short-term expectations. And mismatches like this often lead to price pressure. Even so, it's important to emphasize that AMD has not stumbled operationally. The most recent quarter delivered $9.2 billion in revenue, up 36% from the previous year. Data center revenue grew 22%. The company continues to build strong relationships across the AI ecosystem, including with major players such as OpenAI, Oracle, and leading cloud providers. Its MI300 accelerator family is expanding, and demand for high-performance compute is not slowing down. From a business perspective, AMD is advancing. But the market isn't rewarding advancement right now, it is rewarding acceleration. And acceleration takes time. When a company transitions from the early promise phase of a new cycle into the ramp-up and execution phase, volatility usually increases. Investors become less patient, more sensitive to delays, and more focused on quarter-to-quarter performance. AMD is moving through that transitional stage. What makes the current moment more intriguing is where AMD's stock has landed. Trading near the low 200s, the stock is approaching levels that long-term investors often view as attractive. Not because the price is low in absolute terms, but because the ratio between long-term potential and near-term pessimism becomes more favorable. When a stock weakens while the business continues to expand, it creates opportunity for anyone who believes in the multi-year trajectory rather than the mood of the moment. AMD's long-term ambitions remain bold. The company is aiming to significantly grow its data center and AI segments, challenge industry leaders, and secure a larger share of a rapidly expanding market. That ambition hasn't changed. What has changed is the market's appetite for waiting. And that tension, between ambition and impatience, is now the defining force behind AMD's price movement. As the weekend begins, this tension is exactly what makes AMD so compelling to watch. The stock is weak, but the story is strong. The short-term tone is uncertain, but the long-term direction remains intact. This creates one of the most powerful setups in market psychology, the point where narrative and price temporarily diverge. When narrative and price diverge, one of them eventually has to move. Either the story weakens to match the price, or the price recovers to match the story. These periods often precede meaningful moves, sometimes breakouts, sometimes breakdowns. The question is which direction AMD will take next. Heading into next week, investors will be focused on the signals that can resolve this tension. They will look for any clues that AMD's AI efforts are gaining momentum. They will want to know whether shipments of its accelerators are increasing. They will want visibility into new data center deals and enterprise partnerships. They will be listening for analyst commentary and target revisions. Any shift in tone from analysts or institutions could influence sentiment quickly, especially after several weeks of downward drift. Technical traders will also be watching closely. The $200 range is psychologically important, and the way AMD behaves around that level could determine whether the stock finds support or slips into a deeper correction. If buying activity emerges, the stock could stabilize and reverse. If sellers maintain control, the pullback could continue. This uncertainty is what makes the moment so interesting from a forward-looking perspective. Nothing about AMD's long-term trajectory has fundamentally changed. High-performance computing, AI infrastructure, and data center demand are long-duration trends, not short-term fads. The company's roadmap is aligned with those trends, and its leadership has a strong track record of execution. For that reason, the stock's decline appears to be rooted more in market sentiment and valuation pressure than in business deterioration. This is why the weekend angle becomes compelling. AMD is at a crossroads where the market wants proof, the company is preparing to deliver it, and the stock is pulling back in anticipation. That setup creates a narrative built on possibility rather than fear. It frames the decline not as a sign of collapse, but as a moment of recalibration before the next meaningful phase begins. For anyone evaluating AMD, the key question is simple: does the current weakness represent danger, or does it represent opportunity? If the long-term story holds, and all signs indicate that it does, then periods of weakness can become entry points. If, however, execution slips or the AI cycle slows, weakness can become a warning. Right now, all available signals suggest that AMD's business remains strong and aligned with long-term trends. The company is advancing into a market that is still in the early stages of exponential growth. But the stock is behaving like a company facing headwinds, not because of anything happening inside AMD, but because of what is happening around it: shifting sentiment, changing risk appetite, and fading enthusiasm for high valuation names. The next catalyst, the next data point, or the next analyst shift could change that tone. Markets can move quickly once sentiment flips. When fear gives way to confidence, the stocks that fell the furthest often rebound the fastest. AMD sits in that zone right now. A zone of hesitation, but also a zone of potential. As this weekend begins, AMD's story can be summed up in one idea: the stock is weak, but the future is not. The business remains on course. The demand for AI hardware remains strong. The roadmap remains ambitious. The pressure to prove itself is rising, but this is exactly the stage where strong companies showcase what they are capable of. AMD is preparing for its next chapter. The market is deciding whether to price that chapter now or wait for the next confirmation. And that makes the current moment one of the most intriguing periods AMD investors have seen all year.